Hey guys, the clip you're about to watch was filmed by one of our tutors here at TBT, so I hope it helps you enjoy.
Now let us talk about the pathway of nerve impulses through the spinal cord. Okay, so we are going to begin over here from the receptor. It's gonna go through the spinal cord and we're gonna reach the muscle. Okay, and we're gonna talk about the names of all of the structures in between. Alright, so let's begin with the receptor. Now there are many different kinds of receptors around our body. Let's just use the skin as an example. So that's a common one, right? So for example, I touch something hot with my fingertips. Okay, my fingertips, the receptors on my fingertips, they will detect the stimulus. Okay, once they detect the stimulus, they will generate a nerve impulse. And this nerve impulse, they will travel down the neurons. The first neuron that it will travel down is the sensory neuron. Okay, and you can take note from this diagram, you can tell, right, that the receptors, they are actually part of the sensory neuron. Okay, so maybe that's how they name it, because the sensory neuron, they sense the stimulus. Okay, so this sensory neuron will end here, all the way in the spinal cord. Okay, but it's quite hard to believe, right? Like you imagine my fingertips all the way down to my spine. It's actually a very long distance, right? And we've learned that cells are usually very small, very microscopic. Okay, but neurons, they can be super long, and they are actually the longest cell in the body. Okay, so you can imagine that it's a very long cell. So the sensory neurons will transmit the nerve impulses onto the next neuron. Okay, so the end of the sensory neuron is over here, these two blue lines. Okay, we call that a synapse. Okay, and it will pass this message on to the next neuron, which we call the relay neuron. Okay, and the relay neuron ends here. So relay neurons are very short and their job is very simple. Okay, it's just to relay the message onto the next neuron. So it just passes on the message. It passes on the message onto the next neuron, which is the motor neuron. Okay, and you can see that the motor neuron, it is actually linked to the effector. Okay, so why do we call it motor neuron? It is connected to the muscle, so you can imagine if you start the motor on a car, you start the motor on a motorcycle, it causes action, right? It causes something to move. Okay, so maybe that's why we call it motor neuron. Okay, what are some of the effectors that the motor neuron can be connected to? Okay, what are some effectors that are the targets of the nerve impulses? Number one, the more obvious one, it is your muscle. Okay, now the muscles. What are some effects that the muscle could have? Some effects that could be generated by the nerve impulses. Number one, it could contract. Okay, and that's the more common one within your syllabus. Okay, number two, it could also relax. Okay, now let's talk about the less common effector. It is the glands. What are some effects of the glands? Quite obvious, okay? It is to secrete hormones. Okay, and with this, we are done talking about the pathway of the nerve impulses. Okay, but this diagram, okay, is very nice. It shows you all the blue arrows on the pathway, right? Okay, during exam, usually the examiners are not so nice. You will see something like that. Okay, so when you see something like that, how are you gonna determine the start and the end, right? Okay, this is where you need to focus on these neurons, okay? Neurons, they all have characteristic features. Let's talk about the one on the left, first things first. Okay, this is the relay neuron. How do we know that it is the shortest? Okay, from this diagram over here, you can tell that the relay neuron does not have to be very long because it just relays the message in the spinal cord itself. So you can tell the relay neuron is the shortest. Now the one in the middle, I can tell it is the sensory neuron. And why is that so? Okay, you can tell because the cell body of the sensory neuron is along the side. It's not at the end of the neuron. You can tell the relay neuron and the motor neuron, okay, their cell body is at the end. Okay, so the last one is the motor neuron. So now that we know this, we get back to this figure. Okay, if I chop up the pathway into the three neurons, it's very obvious. I can tell, okay, this one over here, it is the sensory neuron. And I can tell that because now we know that the cell body of a sensory neuron is special. It is only at the side. Okay, it's not at the end. Okay, so now we have gone through the nerve impulses through the spinal cord.
Hey guys, today's sponsor of the video is me. As of making this video, ThatBioTutor is Singapore's only O-level pure bio specialist. You mean you don't teach any other subjects or syllabus? Yup, that's how we've been able to make so much resources just for your syllabus. Example, concise notes without all the extra fluff. Commonly asked questions that come out under every topic, so you know the exact keywords and phrases to score full marks. Didn't pay attention in class? Crash course clips to the rescue. We've recorded explanations for every concept under every chapter. Find bio a chore to memorize, flashcards on your phone, which makes it feel like a game. So if you need help with O-level pure bio, what are you waiting for? Click the link below this video or go to thatbiotutor.com. Now back to the video.
Often during exams, we will see this big 4 5 mark question. Okay, it will ask you to describe the pathway of nerve impulses in a reflex action. And usually they will give you a bit of a context. So maybe knee-jerk reflex, something like that. Okay, so how are we going to make it easier on ourselves to remember what keywords we need to include when we are talking about this pathway of nerve impulses? Okay, this is where I will introduce to you guys a very helpful memory shortcut. So you need to remember this sentence. I raced several racing cars, making every race perfect. IRSRCMERP. Okay, so each of the letters that's underlined, it stands for keyword to help us with the answering framework. So now let's look at what each letter stands for. So we'll start with the IRS. Firstly, we need to talk about the incident. So what happened? Let's use the example of touching a hot stove. Okay, so that is the incident that happened. Now let's move on to R. R stands for receptor. Okay, so what receptors detect this stimulus? So in this instance, we will be talking about the pain or thermoreceptors on our fingertips, right? Okay, S. S stands for sensory neuron. Okay, moving on to R. C. R stands for relay neuron. And C actually stands for the reflex center. Okay, so in our context, it will be the spinal cord. Now moving on to M. If you can make a guess what is M, it is the motor neuron. Okay, now on to the last three. E, R, P. Okay, if we continue on the story, what is the motor neuron connected to? It is connected to the effector. Okay, now in our context, what could the effector possibly be? It will probably be the arm or the bicep muscles. Okay, the effector carries out a response. So in our case, it will probably be the muscles will contract. Lastly, so what is the purpose? What's the purpose of carrying out this reflex action? In our instance, it will be to prevent further injury or prevent the person getting burned by the hot stove. Okay, so with this memory shortcut, IRSRCMERP, we have learned how to answer these kinds of 4-5 mark questions that ask you to describe the pathway of nerve impulses.
Hey guys, if that was helpful for you, then subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to join our O-level pure bio tuition classes, click the link below or go to ThatBioTutor.com.